This Health Minute is brought to you by St. Francis Health. We listen, we heal.
Well, a new survey shows climate change is impacting Americans' mental health. Michael George takes a look.
It's been a summer filled with extreme heat, storms, and wildfires, all events that have been increasing in recent years. Jordan Ansberry says climate change is on her mind.
It is stressful because it's like, what is this going to look like in 10 years, in 20 years? If I want to have kids one day, like, what are they going to go through?
More than half of adults say climate change is impacting their mental health, up from 48% in 2022, according to the American Psychiatric Association.
Individuals are worried about climate change, and that's what we think most about in terms of how it affects mental health. But it also affects it in a number of other ways. We know that there are direct impacts of heat on the brain. We see that the rate of suicides and violent crimes go up during heat waves.
Dr. Joshua Wartzel is chair of the APA's Committee on Climate Change and Mental Health.
And then there are the trauma effects of natural disasters from climate change and our distress about what we're seeing in the world around us.
The survey also shows more than half of Americans are anxious about the way the government is dealing with the climate change issue.
They can definitely speak to a mental health provider if they're feeling particularly distressed, as if this is affecting their thoughts of wanting to live or their more immediate well-being. They should certainly seek out emergency mental health care.
Robert Rosso says the recent heat waves are taking a toll.
It stresses me out because it's like almost feels like the embodiment of the whole climate change thing. It's like it's here and it's like outside when I walk outside.
Younger people, Black and Hispanic people, are more likely to cite the effects of climate change on their mental health. Michael George, CBS News, New York.